What a big day it is. Duke football has an opportunity to do something that they have never done before. Can they get the job done? We discuss here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson, and it is so great to have you here with us on Friday, October 18th, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. We're talking a lot about the Duke football team here today, as tonight they're trying to do something they have never done before. Never has Duke football defeated Florida State, and we try to do that on the gridiron at Wallace Wade Stadium. Conor ONeal from Devils Illustrated and Duke Rivals is here on today's show to break it all down with us. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Also, check us out on YouTube to watch the show every day. Hello to our everydayers. Appreciate your support as always. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, share it with your friends, and go ahead and also comment down below your thoughts on all things Duke athletics. All right, Conor ONeal, like we said, here with us on today's show. We've got a big Duke football game to get a hold of here tonight. And Conor, it's good to see you once again.
Good to be seen. We're maybe an hour away from me having to shower and head to Durham, so we'll get this in.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to see this game play out between Duke and Florida State. Obviously, history is something that you talk about a lot when it's this football series between the two schools. Duke has never been able to beat Florida State in a football game.
Yeah, and that's wild in its own right. The even crazier within that is it's only been a it's only been a single-digit loss once in 22 games. And it wasn't even last year when Duke went to the fourth quarter with a lead, which kind of shows you how misleading that game was, the way it played out, especially after Riley Leonard's foot injury. But I think the only single-digit margin in this series was 17-10 in Jimbo Fisher's last year in 2017. And so it's been a lot of dominance. Obviously, it's not like Duke has been dominated by Boston College. Like, they've been dominated by a team that's won national championships, but it's kind of got a feel to, if not now, then when for Duke in this one.
Without a doubt. I mean, and even beyond that, the 2017 game that finishes with the final score of 17-10. You mentioned it. That's the only one-score game there is. Last year's game ended up with an 18-point margin. In 2007, there was a 19-point margin between the two, and that's been the closest. Those three games in itself, I mean, this series, in so many ways, on average, it's like a 20-point difference between these two football teams playing one another.
Yeah, I mean, even they faced off in an ACC championship game against each other. So you think that's two of the best teams in the ACC. It was 45-7, and that 7 only came. I didn't even realize this until I was looking at the box score earlier today. That 7 came with like a minute left in the game. It was just Duke had a shutout against the eventual national champs in 2013 in the first quarter. But man, it's slim pickings when you try to go through some silver linings of what Duke has done against Florida State and find some positives here.
Without a doubt. And finding positives is what we're going to do, because this Duke football team is actually favored to beat Florida State in tonight's football game. If you were to give a quick recap as to what the season has been like for FSU, how would you sum that up, Conor?
I mean, I've kind of got a steal from Patrick Burnham. Had me on. He covers FSU with the Rivals site. I mean, he basically called it a bizarro season, like the Seinfeld episode of the Bizarro World, where everything was kind of turned on its head. I mean, this is a program that was undefeated last year when they had their guys. Even won the ACC championship after Jordan Travis's season-ending injury. It was a program that, Yeah, they had to replace a ton of talent. They lost so many key contributors to last year's team, but they reloaded. This is a program that reloads. They don't rebuild. And you especially rebuild when you reload when you've got the access to the transfer portal and access to NIL and immediate eligibility for transfers across the board. So it's kind of stunning when you look at the numbers and look at where they're not getting production from where they thought they were going to be getting production. DJU obviously didn't work out at quarterback. They've had to turn back to Brock Glenn. They're having to figure out if their quarterback of next year is even on the roster right now. It's a little bit of a youth movement. I mean, they can still get bowl eligible, but I kind of don't think that's goal number one for this program right now. I think they're trying to figure out who can they build with moving forward to kind of start putting the pieces back together, because it's already unraveled. This is a team that won 13 games last year that's 1-5 and has lost to Memphis. They went to SMU and got just housed. I think that was 42-16. This is a program that is really searching for a lot of answers right now. And I mean, they can try to start finding them tonight at Duke.
Without a doubt, they've got an opportunity to do that. We'll see how Duke responds coming off a bye week and coming off Duke's first loss of the season, the last time that they played a football game. We'll go ahead and we'll take our first time out here on today's show. We continue our conversation with Conor ONeal here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Go ahead and check out FanDuel.com for all the best odds. Duke currently favored by a field goal over Florida State, according to our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. We keep it moving here on today's show. Conor ONeal's back with us. Duke football, last time we saw them play a game, they lost against Georgia Tech. And then they've had a bye week to kind of regroup and get ready for this upcoming game. What's been the message that you heard from Manny Diaz as to how the last few weeks have played out for Duke?
Well, if you can hear Bo barking in the background, he's real fired up. And I think Manny Diaz is really fired up. I think this Duke team is fired up because they were – look, there's a fine line that they've kind of threaded. Fine needle – I guess you're threading needles, right? Whatever the analogy there is, there's a way to say to not take anything away from Georgia Tech, because Georgia Tech is a good team, while also acknowledging that Duke was out of gas the last time we saw them. They were just not on empty, but they were close enough to empty where you can start to understand how they gave up 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns when that had been such a point of pride for this program over the last 2.5 years. We learned after the fact, we learned that earlier this week that going into the Georgia Tech game, Duke was unable to practice with shoulder pads on. And that's just, you can imagine you get to play your sport once a week and you get a lot more practice time than you actually get to go out there and play. And it disrupts your preparation when you can't even do the basic things that allow you to play the game. And they couldn't put on shoulder pads and hit each other because of where they were physically after 5 games. And it's also worth noting, in those first 5 games, they didn't really have much comfort. It was kind of a 4-quarter drag them out game against Elon. The Northwestern game was obviously tight. The UConn game became really tight. Middle Tennessee, I mean, they kind of got a reprieve after the weather delay. So that was about a quarter and a half. And then the Carolina game took a 20-point comeback. So that's all emotionally draining. It's physically draining to go from fall camp to 5 straight games and then a 6th. So it's a program right now that I think is feeling a little bit of an energy burst coming out of that first off week, coming out of, getting some time to hit a reset button of sorts, kind of find some more enthusiasm. And I think that's gonna show up tonight.
Florida State, SMU, Miami, the next three opponents due up for Duke. They're 1 win away from bowl eligibility and Manny Diaz's first year as the head coach of this Duke football team. Malik Murphy has been the quarterback this season for Duke. He was the big transfer that they got. We talked about him all off-season long, and now we've seen him play half a year for Duke. What's kind of been the assessment as we've had this kind of bye week and off week to reflect back on what Duke's gotten out of that quarterback spot?
If I had a coin, I would flip it. It's been a mixed bag with Malik. I think the first part of it is he's got to be more consistent, right? We've seen games where he'll have 2 or 3 possessions or drives in a row where it seems like he's not even giving receivers a chance to make plays. And you can't do that as a P4 quarterback. You have to at least put the ball in a catchable spot for your guy to go make a play. And when he's not doing that, you're just wasting downs and you're wasting drives. And that needs to improve pretty bluntly there. Well, we've also seen what he can do when he's on. And when he's on and when the ball is delivered accurately and when it's on time, which for the most part it's been on time, even when he's inaccurate, the ball gets out quick. He's one of the best throwers in the ACC. Like there's a lot there to build with. And the hurdle or challenge for Duke's staff is figuring out how to get more of Malik. And it's a challenge and hurdle for Malik also to figure out how to get him skewed more towards the good Malik than the bad version that we see pop up seemingly for parts and sequences of every game. And so, like I said, mixed bag. The talent is undeniable. I think the other part of the conversation is like if you're waiting for him to start pulling RPOs and running with the ball, you're going to be waiting for a long time because that's just not his game. It's not who he is, and it's not the way Duke's offense is going to operate. So you're just kind of waiting for him to become more consistent as a passer.
What about those pass catchers that he's throwing the football to so far this season? No, Jordan Moore was going to be a focal point of this offense given what he had done a year ago, but guys like Eli Pancol has stepped up big time so far this season for Duke. Nicky Dalmolin in the tight end room has had a good year so far.
Dude, Eli Pancol to me is one of the better stories in the ACC right now. I mean, the guy, we don't know and we can't talk about it for certain because nobody was there other than Duke's team and medical staff and those types of people. But the way his injury last year in fall camp has been described was gruesome. I believe somebody at one point used the term like we'll say it was a scene that would make some weaker stomach people throw up if they saw it. Like it was a horrific injury that he's been able to bounce back from. And now all of a sudden he's got as many touchdowns this season as he did in the first 4 that he played for Duke from 2019 to 22. So he has really become the best version of himself in this kind of bonus year that he has because he had last year as a medical redshirt. He also played at Duke in the COVID season. So it's fantastic to see Eli round into form. Jordan Moore's usage is one thing to really keep an eye on tonight. He was a heavy target in his first 3 games. In the last 3, he hasn't seen the same depth, the same type of targets. So I would assume that he's going to be a little more of a focal point tonight. I think they'll try to hit him early and try to hit him often. And the thing that I dove into, I can't even remember what story it was at this point, but the thing I dove into was he has less yards after the catch this year than he did in the last 2 seasons. And it's really been in decline since the first year that he was a receiver, which was 22. But that first season as a receiver, like 44% of his yardage came after the catch. Last year it was something, I think it was like 32% or maybe or in that neighborhood. This year he's only picking up 20% of his yards after the catch. So it's one thing, it's good that he's a downfield threat, that he's a deep ball threat, but also you've got to think, like, put him in positions that he wants to be in and that he's proven he can succeed in. And that means throwing him the occasional screen and letting him roll. I would expect to see a little bit more of that as both tonight and going forward into the season.
We're excited to see this offense get on display, and that's not even mentioning the running game that Duke has had as of late with Star Thomas emerging out of the backfield. Also, to pick up a win, Duke's defense needs to have another strong performance, keeping Florida State off the scoreboard. We'll talk a little bit more about that defensive effort needed after we take this final break here today. Our show today, Locked On Blue Devils, brought to you by Hims. Hims is a changing men's healthcare brand by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra, their generics, for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help find the ED option that works for you. Start for free online today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Hims is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, let's keep going. Final segment here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson joined today by Conor ONeal from Devils Illustrated. Tell us about your coverage, Conor. You've got the football game. We've got Duke basketball. Tomorrow, you do Deacons Illustrated for Wake Forest coverage. How can people get plugged into your work?
Yeah, it's duke.rivals.com is where you can find Devils Illustrated. I just within the hour posted a beefy story about Duke basketball that'll get you prepared for tomorrow's exhibition game against Lincoln. Covers some things about Mason Gillis being a childhood Duke fan and other things of that nature. We'll have football coverage up tonight. We've got football preview if you want to go check it out now before and become a smarter fan. Tap in. Running a deal right now that goes for another day or two. That's free until December. So you subscribe now, you don't get charged until December. It's a great way to check it out. And if you like it, then stay on board. And if not, no worries.
Okay, so Florida State, Duke has never defeated the Seminoles. They're trying to do that for the first time ever a little bit later tonight. To do that, pretty simple. Got to score more points than the other team. If the defense has a great game, you got to feel good about what Duke's going to see. We've talked about the quarterback back and forth so far this season for FSU. Defensively, what is it going to take for Duke to get the job done?
The first thing is Florida State has been pretty bad running the ball. I still hold Lawrence Toafili in pretty high esteem as a ACC running back. So I think goal number one has to be turning Florida State into a one-dimensional offense and making that one dimension be the passing game. Like, I think you're banking on a second-year quarterback who's made 3 career starts not beating you through the air with receivers that aren't named Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson last year. Like, they don't have those aliens anymore this year. So I think you stop the run game, even though their run game has been terrible. And then you just, it then becomes a equation of how much can you confuse Brock Glenn and can you keep him in the pocket? He is a decent runner, even though his numbers don't show it. And if you can confuse him and get him into some mistakes, get him into making rush decisions, then this is a game that, Duke can put up a pretty low number on the scoreboard in terms of how many points Florida State scores. So I think it's a pretty straightforward game plan, especially when you're talking about facing a guy who's making his 4th career start.
So I'm looking at this game, and from the Duke side of things, they're coming off the off week, and hopefully the defense can use this time to rest up, be ready to go after the first 6 weeks. And then here I am reading your preview, Connor, and it's like not so fast. The off week being this type of advantage, you've got a number here within the story, again, over at duke.rivals.com. Coming off an off week, teams are 49-56 this season. That's less than 500.
Yeah, this is one of my pet peeves in college football coverage. I think it's a bleed down effect from the NFL because most people who are college fans are also fans of the NFL, and I think the numbers bear out in the NFL that the off week is a benefit. You never want to be an NFL team who just played a game and is playing a team that is more rested than yours. But in college, it's different. Like, probably because you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds instead of grown men. I think it's just basically down to a coin flip of whether teams come out of the off week rested or rusty. And so for Duke, it's the undeniable thing is that they were a worn out football team that rest wise, they're going to benefit from having last week off. But the other side of that, and we'll know in just a few hours, is if Duke comes out and starts slow, it'll be a little rust showing. It'll also be because that's what they've done in the majority of games offensively this year. But yeah, it's I've been banging that drum for a lot of years. It is not the advantage that people think it is in college football, and the numbers prove it. This is a little bit different of a year with 2 of them baked into the schedules, 3 of them for teams that played in week 0, like Florida State. So I want to make sure, I'm glad you brought it up, JJ, because I want to make sure everybody knows the off week is not a guaranteed advantage that people think it is.
Well, hopefully it is tonight for the Duke football team, because hopefully they're able to do something they've never done before. I hope that we're all about to witness a historic evening at Wallace Wade Stadium, again, having never defeated Florida State. In conclusion here today, how likely is it that we get to see history tonight, Connor, and what are those final things that Duke needs to take care of to make this happen?
I think it's pretty likely. I'm a little surprised that the line from Vegas and the books is not larger than it is, honestly.
Yeah.
But I think at some point you start betting on Florida State's talent to win out. They're going to have more talent in certain spots than Duke does. I don't think we have to hurt any feelings by saying that. For Duke, it's like I said, defensively, you got to confuse Brock Glenn. You gotta force him into some tough decisions and decisions he doesn't want to make. And offensively, you want Duke to start faster. Almost combine Duke and start and dart.
Yeah.
You want them to start faster offensively. They've come out and gone down 17-0 at halftime against Carolina. It was 10-0 early against Georgia Tech. You can't spot every ACC team you play a double-digit lead before you start clicking offensively. So if Duke comes out and hits an early gear and an early pitch offensively, I'll feel really good about them staying in rhythm and kind of rolling up points against this Florida State team.
We'll see if they're able to get the job done. Fired up for sure to see what the Duke football team can do a little bit later tonight. Connor, the time is always greatly appreciated chatting with you each and every week. And thanks for stopping by here today, man.
My pleasure. Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Conor ONeal. Check out his work again, duke.rivals.com. Let's hope Duke can get it done tonight. Let's hope we see a very exciting Duke basketball debut tomorrow in their exhibition against Lincoln. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you on Monday. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.